Jim, I have a slide about the tree planting. So Chad might ask you to talk about that in the announcements. Hello, hello. Hello to our speaker. Oh, I think he's muted. Go ahead and unmute.
There we go. How's that?
That's better.
Can
Nice
you
to
hear me?
meet you. How are you?
Doing well, Karen. Doing well. So I have some slides. If you're interested, any way we can test them, that would be probably make me feel a little better. So.
All right. I just went ahead and did multiple participants can share. So if you want to test your slides, go ahead.
All right.
Let's see if you can pull them up.
Okay. Looks good from here. How are you?
There we. Looks good from here too.
Okay.
We're good.
So I'm gonna, I guess, hit stop share. Is that correct for right now?
Right.
Okay.
All right. We look forward. I think it's a good time to talk about it.
Yes, yes. No, the story is really resonates in this year.
And he wants me to do page. So hello all.
Hi, Stu. How are you? Stu Melvin. Right back.
That's fine. Hello, Chad.
Good morning.
How are you?
How are you doing, Steve? Good to see you.
Doing well. Doing well, Chad.
Good.
Oh, who am I not letting in? Oh, George.
Good morning, Karen. Morning, everybody.
Hi, George.
I brought a copy of his book. This is
Oh, nice.
Steve.
It-
I'm your advance man.
Yeah, there you go. Thank you,
is,
George.
is it autographed yet?
Oh, I think he autographed
I
it.
think
Yes,
I
you
think I did.
Yes, you did. Thank you, Steve. Hey, is it still on for sale?
Well, I believe so. Um, the, we got some from the publisher, I don't know, 2-3 months ago, and in the university bookstore usually had a handful on sale. So I think so.
It's still
I think it
available.
certainly is.
Is it on Amazon?
Yes, yes.
It'd make a great Christmas gift, especially for children or young people or even university students, because this is a big year for his life. Isn't this
yes,
timely? You know,
yes, very, very true. And it is a children's book. I had somebody
yeah,
read it once and say, well, it sounds like a kid's book. And I kind of said, well, it is.
it
In
is.
fact,
Yeah,
it's actually made, it's called a high-low book, high interest, low vocabulary. It's actually from a line of books for reluctant readers. So it's quite simplistic.
yeah.
But I think it tells a story. Of course, we know a lot more, not a lot, but we know more now than we did when that book came out 20 years
You
ago.
did a lot of research for this book. You revealed a lot of things that weren't known up to then. And it is a perfect gift for Christmas for young ones. It's something you could read to them.
Mhm. Yes, yeah, no, it's always worked well when I needed a quick gift for somebody. So I got to say hi to Dean Phillips there, waving. Dean, if I known you were going to be on, he could have just come over and sat with me. But Dean's my next door neighbor and has been for
Oh.
19, 20 years. So
And we still speak to each other.
well, we try to take good care of Dean and Carol because we don't want to have to get new neighbors. They're good neighbors.
And likewise.
Yeah. Dean has helped me out plenty of times on things big and small. So.
Well, looks like we're up to 54 now, which is a pretty good turnout for a chilly Monday. 56, scratch that, and growing, so that's good. And the last virtual meeting, which was a few weeks ago now, we incorporated our opportunity to all stand, and Karen's going to put a picture of our U.S. flag on the screen so that we can open our meeting appropriately with the Pledge of Allegiance. So if you don't mind, Karen, who's saying wait 1 minute, she's muted, but she's given me the wait 1 minute signal. Maybe she's finding a real flag. I saw the slide. And there we go. Welcome to the October 26th meeting of the Rotary Club of Ames. I'll just ask all of you to stand and salute the flag here as we all recite our Pledge of Allegiance. And I'll just try to do a good job of saying it for the whole group, but you're all welcome to unmute and go for it. So I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands,
One
one nation,
under
under
God,
God,
indivisible,
indivisible,
with liberty and justice for all. Awesome. Thank you. And I'm sure this will sound good as well. We have John Christie of our music committee who's going to entertain us and welcome everyone here with our welcome song. So take it away, John.
Thanks, Chad. And a special welcome to our guests and visitors. This song is for you. Welcome to you from Ames Rotary, Naveda, London, or Gay Paris, from far off lands or the USA. We're glad that you are here today. Come back again whenever you're near. Join us and then we'll make it clear. Around the world you will always be welcome at Rotary.
Thank you, John. Great job, as always. We have a few announcements, but before we get to those announcements, maybe we'll take a minute here. I'm not aware of anyone, specifically a club member or someone closely related to us that needs that extra thought today. Is there anyone? Feel free to unmute. If you know of someone who in our club might require an extra thought or a prayer here this morning. Okay, not hearing anyone specifically. Let's just take a minute and just think about peace. Think about peace for this week and next week and all the challenges that do come along with, unfortunately, an election week. But let's send positive thoughts that way. All right, great. We have a number of announcements and some slides here to go along with them. First of all, I know there's not a slide here, but thank you to the, I believe, 25 or so club members and also tour guides that met us at the Miracle Park and Field last Monday. Unfortunately, the weather was not ideal, less than ideal, but we are quite certain that this spring, as things open up, we'll have another opportunity. But Jeff and the Centennial Celebration Committee, had us gather there, and I think that was a great start, great kickoff. What an awesome opportunity we have there to showcase the Rotary Club, but more than that, just to be a destination for Central Iowa and beyond. That park and that club, or that park and the field, are amazing. So hopefully soon, I think it's going to be open to the public. The fences will be down, and feel free just to go out there and check it out on your own on a nicer weather day. And next week, we're hopeful, as November 2nd rolls in, that we would also be able to meet jointly as a club here on Zoom, but also to reconvene at the garden room at the Gateway. I know we tried this for October. There were several people, I think, that were not available just due to travel commitments and other things. But we do have 30 seats available at the Gateway in the garden room. We will be recording this meeting. We will also still be conducting it over Zoom. So you won't miss out if you don't come in person, but if you do want to, we will meet in a socially responsible fashion, and we will adhere to their guidelines as hosting a conference. You will be billed for your meal separately if you choose to participate, but we need to know ahead of time, and we need to know fairly soon. So please email Karen by 3 p.m. Wednesday. If we don't get up to 20, then we will continue with our Zoom meetings a bit longer, but we are certainly open and excited to be able to offer hybrid solutions. And we thought next week would be another good time to start it. But again, pass the word around. If somebody isn't on this call, we'll send out an email, but please get your reservation to Karen by 3 p.m. Wednesday, and we'll make that work. And our next announcement, here we go. So an important vote. This is a vote of all of the membership. We have nominations that are filling vacancies on our current board of directors. Kent Frankenfeld has been nominated as the president-elect designee, who would become club president in July of 2022 and serve through June of 2023. He also is filling the board seat vacated by Drew Camp, who had to resign and relocated. And we have a nomination also to fill then a vacant seat of Kent Frankenfeld through June of 2021, and that would be Deb Schildroth, who we would like to welcome to our board of directors. So those are your nominees, and what I will ask in some fashion, if everyone wants to unmute and go ahead and give me a yes in a moment if you are okay with that, and then we'll ask for a no if you're not okay with that. So if you are okay with these two nominees and their respective seats that they'll be filling, please reply yes.
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 Wonderful. Is there anyone who would not be in favor of this? Please say no at this time. All right, crickets chirping, so that's a good sign. Welcome, Kent. Congratulations. Welcome, Deb. The club will be in great hands now in the future beyond Kelsey, because we've identified, I think, some great leaders, and we're excited to have them as a part of our board and our officer slate. So thank you. Here's a reminder, Jim, feel free if you want to add anything to this commentary, but if you want to help us plant trees on Thursday, I think it's going to be what, 42, 43 degrees, Jim. So it should be a lot warmer than right now. And we'll be planting trees from 3:30 to 6:30 on Thursday, the 29th. There is a new bike path that runs southwest from the second roundabout near the Ted Tedesco entrance. There's some apartments off to the west side of University, and you can park along Cottonwood or Aurora, but you have to register in advance. You see that link there, and there was an email that went out as well. And then please, when you register, note that you're with the Rotary Club in the comments section. I think we would probably need a lot of people just to make this go pretty smooth. Dress warm, wear warm boots that you don't mind getting muddy, and gloves. And Jim Patton, is there anything else that I forgot to mention?
No, you pretty well covered it. We are going to plant trees, and I'll be there actually by 3 if anybody wants to show up early. We have some Girl Scouts that are going to join us. So we want to make ourselves look good.
Wonderful. Thank you very much for organizing that, Jim Patton. And we'll hopefully have a lot of people come out and plant trees together. FYI, this Wednesday, the Ames Morning Rotary Club has offered us an invitation to view their Zoom program. Their guest is Dean David Spalding of the Ivy College of Business at Iowa State University. So if you'd like to join, Karen sent out an email, I believe, but also just be aware that that is Wednesday morning, this Wednesday, about 7 a.m. to 7:45 if you're interested in that program. And that was it. So now I'm excited to have Mr. Jeff Johnson unmute himself and take a moment to introduce today's speaker and give us a bit of the background and a proper introduction for our program today. Take it away, Jeff.
Thanks, Chad, and good afternoon, everyone. And Steve, let me start out by saying thank you, especially on a short call, agreeing to be our guest speaker today. For those of you who are not aware of who Steve is, Steve retired in 2018 after 35 years in educational communication and public affairs, which included 21 years here at Iowa State. He authored 2 children's books published by Perfection Learning Corporation of Des Moines. One, which has already been discussed and will be discussed today, is Football's Fallen Hero, the Jack Trice story, which was published in 2000. And then The Red Tails, World War II's Tuskegee Airmen, and that was published in 2001. Steve has a bachelor's degree in journalism from Iowa State and a master's degree in communication and public relations from the University of Northern Iowa. And so we're glad to have you with us this afternoon, Steve, and I'll turn it over to you. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Jeff. Can everyone hear me? If, as we used to say, if you can't hear me, let me know. But I'm assuming if you can hear me, you'll wave or something, right? Okay, very good then. So, well, first of all, yes, Jeff, really, really glad to come here. I've been to a couple meetings here, one as a guest, one as a few years ago I brought somebody in a public affairs position to speak to your group, and then there are plenty other Rotary groups. And this one, I'm always impressed at how big, how organized it is. And so thank you for all you do for the community and that sort of thing. So I see a lot of familiar faces here. I hope you're, I hope I haven't told you a different story about Jack Trice at one time or another in the past. But so I'm going to go ahead and see if we can do this Jack Trice screen. Are you seeing a picture of a young Jack Trice? Okay, there we go then. So very good then. So, well, often I'm asked, who is Jack Trice? And I say, well, he was a student athlete. He was a devoted son and a loving husband. But most of all, he was an idealistic young man who came to Iowa State. He was hoping to earn an agricultural degree and then take that degree, move down south and help Black farmers in the 1920s. They needed a lot of help, and he thought he could be that person. Of course, he never got to do that. Jack was quite a remarkable person, and I think in 2020, his story resonates more than it ever has. And the more that more people learn about Jack Trice, the better. The farther I get away from Ames, the less people know about him. I've been asked, hey, was he a rich alumnus? Is that why his name is on the stadium? And I'll say, no, he was neither. He came from a poor family, and he never graduated from Iowa State. Let's see. All right, trying to get this to move. There we go. So over 20 years ago, I was working in an old Morrill Hall for University Relations and the News Service. And I had this photo of Jack Trice that went up there, and I was looking at it, sitting at my desk. And I'm looking at him thinking, boy, he looks like a nice guy. He has his head tilted. He's got kind of a confident, maybe cocky smile. He just looks like a nice guy. Then I started looking at him closely and says, man, he's got big shoulders, long, big arms. And he really looks like an athlete. And that's when I decided, hey, maybe I should write a book about Jack Trice. Well, maybe the book was going to be, an inch thick. And somebody said, this would be the perfect story for children's literature. And that's really how I got started on it, and all this and that. So Jack Trice, to fill you in on his background, he came from Northeast Ohio, from around the area of the town Hiram. His mother was a widow, and from everything we can understand, he had a great existence there. He got along well with all the kids in basically a white community, and he really was happy. Well, his mother, Anna, made a bold move. She decided when he was in the 8th grade that he was going to move to Cleveland, stay with an aunt and uncle, and go to a high school there. The reasoning was she figured if he stayed in this small town, he would just be sheltered from the ways of the world for an African American in the World War I days. He kind of reluctantly went to East Technical High School. The name, a new building exists, but the name still exists there, I believe. And turned out to be a gifted athlete. As a sophomore, he was starting on the varsity team, the varsity football team. They had one loss. As a junior, they were undefeated during the regular season, blew out all their opponents. They outscored them during the year of something like 441-0, that sort of thing. And then they played a high school postseason game in Everett, Washington. So the East Tech team decided to go out there by train. They rode on the train about 3 nights, played Everett High, lost a game 16-7. They kind of blamed being a little tired from the 3-day train ride, which could be it. Well, what's interesting is that the coach of the team, Sam Williman, he really liked Jack Trice. So he arranged 1 or 2 social events for Jack Trice with African Americans from the Everett area. And he consistently, we have evidence that he did things for Jack to keep, to make sure he had a good experience, and I would almost argue that he watched over for Jack. So 12th grade year, Jack's team again went 8-0. They tried to get a postseason game, but since they'd beaten one team 89-0, nobody took him up on it. Well, Jack Trice graduated. He had a girlfriend from Youngstown named Cora Mae Starlard. Life was going good. He didn't know what he was going to do. Opportunities for Black football players in 1922 were limited. So he was working construction, trying to figure out what he was going to do, road construction. He was approached by Sam Williman, who had a new job. He was hired as the new head football coach at Iowa State College. And one of the things he was going to do was bring a bunch of those good East Tech football players with him. So Jack Trice decided to go, but before he went, he decided to do one thing. He and Cora Mae eloped. So he was like, 19, maybe 20. She was all of 15. High school was going into her senior year at high school. They went up into the farthest southeast corner county in Michigan, eloped, got married. On the wedding license, they fudged her age up a few years. Jack didn't have a middle initial. He always wanted one, so they picked G. They always got a laugh over that, just that one would choose his or her own middle name. So Cora Mae stayed in Youngstown, went to high school. Jack came to Ames and started going to school, studying animal husbandry, and started playing freshman football. Now, freshman football and all freshman sports back then were not intercollegiate. All the freshmen did was practice and scrimmage the varsity, and that's the way it was in football too. It was a way to weed out players. They'd start with a huge number, and then only a few would basically have an opportunity to join the varsity the next year. Remember, this was single platoon football, which means we didn't have 22 starters. We had 11. So they had to go play both ways with limited substitution. So Jack, as we understand, had a pretty good freshman year. He went out for track. He was a shot putter. In fact, he won the Missouri Valley Conference freshman shot put title that year. It was a telegraphic meet. In other words, all the competitors competed at home, and their results were then telegraphed to St. Louis, and he turned out to be the winner. Another thing that Jack did was he worked at state gym. They didn't have athletic scholarships at this time. Athletic department gave jobs to some athletes to help pay their way through school. One of the people that Jack worked with was a man named Alan Bowler. His nickname was Shorty. He was a catcher on the Iowa State team, which of course in the 20s still, Iowa State's athletic teams were just known as Ames, hence the baseball jersey. I was able to talk to Alan when he was in his 90s, and he died he died from the time I interviewed him before the book came out. But he shared a lot of information about Jack Trice that we didn't know. He said Jack Trice worked really hard to make people like him. And he said not everybody did. I said, well, did they ever pick on him? Did they ever do anything? And Alan just kind of laughed and said, no, not somebody as big as Jack Trice. But if they didn't like him, they just kind of ignore him, this sort of thing. But Alan and Jack got along pretty well. Alan would sometimes say, hey, we're going to go out to eat afterwards. You want to join me? Jack would go, but most of the time not. And it kind of turned out to be Jack didn't want to go to a restaurant where maybe the owner welcomed him and was glad to take his business, but maybe the customers wouldn't. And Jack Trice was not the kind of guy to push himself into situations like that. So they worked together, and Jack worked during the school year. He started working a little bit into summer. Then he went back to Ohio. So we're talking the summer of 1923. He visited his mother. He grabbed Cora Mae, and on October 6th, 1923, they arrived or I'm not, sorry, not October 6th, August 6th, 1923, they arrived in Ames. And Cora May started school in home economics, and Jack continued there. So they had about 2 months together. And from everything we can understand, they had a pretty good existence in Ames. They lived in an apartment in the Masonic Temple building, which is now home of the. I'm losing my memory there, but the Octagon up, just south of the Ames Public Library, lived upstairs there. So 1923, football season started. All those freshmen were pretty good players. In fact, when they were these freshmen who were now sophomores, when they were freshmen a year ago, they could sometimes beat the whole varsity. So a lot of them were playing. This photo that you're seeing, you can see Jack Trice there, second from the left. We've got 3 players that came from East Tech, the Boehm brothers, spelled B as in boy, E-H-M. Johnny on Jack Trice's right, and Norton to Jack's left. We're going to go to Notre Dame, but Sam Williman talked them into coming to Ames. And the guy on the far right, Champ Hardy, wasn't quite the caliber of the other 3, but he was also a good player. The team practiced hard. They had their first game against Simpson College. They won that game 14-6, which led them to the game the following Saturday against the University of Minnesota. This was considered the first major, almost real game of the season. Although we count the Simpson game in the Iowa State records as a game, back then they almost looked at it as an exhibition. So they practiced hard all week, really hard, because Minnesota was really good. Iowa State was trying to up its game in football. In the 1920s, college football was all the rage. A lot of stadiums were being built. Minnesota built a stadium like a year or 2 after this. It was a big time for football. So they practiced hard Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, a little lighter workout. They had a pep rally on campus, and Coach Williman fired up the fans and the team, and then they were getting ready to go to Minneapolis by train. Jack asked a favor. He said, on the way to the depot, and they were actually catching a train out of Nevada and going north. So on their drive to Nevada, Jack asked, can I stop and say goodbye to Cora May one last time? The coaches said yes. So Jack got out of the car, ran up to the Masonic Temple building. He comes in, and Cora May, and she's looking surprised. She goes, Jack, what are you doing here? You have a train to catch. And he just came over and hugged her. And she was kind of wondering about that. She said, Jack, what's going on? And he just held her tighter. He just gripped it. Cora May was a short woman. Jack was over 6 foot tall. So I can imagine there was a lot of difference when they stood together. And she goes, Jack, you're scaring me. Then down below, the coaches are yelling, come on, Jack, we got a train to catch, come on. And then he held her even tighter. Jack, you're scaring me. Come on, Jack, let's go. Finally, Jack let Cora May go, and he left. And she always wondered about that. So they ride the train overnight up to Minneapolis. They get up there into the morning, and the following afternoon, they check in to their hotels. Following afternoon, the team practiced, a secret practice that had kept everybody out, getting ready for Minnesota the next day. And then there was the team was going to have a meal that evening. A reserve halfback on the team was Bob Fisher. Bob Fisher was not a very big guy. Came from Northwest Iowa. In fact, he'd never even played high school football. But he was fast. He was an athlete, baseball, basketball. He beat Pinky Green. If you know anything about Iowa State football lore, Pinky was one of those super fast guys. And he beat him in a race, and the coach said, I want you out for football. And, he relented, and there he was. And he got to know Jack. They weren't close friends, but they were acquaintances, they friends, they liked each other, and they would talk when they see each other. Had the opportunity to talk to Bob in his 90s while I was writing the book. So there's a team meal, and Bob Fisher comes down. He's a little bit late, and there's not a big crowd there because they only have 20 some players and a few coaches and a team doctor and this sort of thing. And Bob sits down, and all of a sudden he notices something different, and he asks, "Where's Jack?" Well, that's when they told him that the hotel dining room would not allow Jack to be in there because he was black. Well, where was Jack? Jack was in his room at the Curtis Hotel. You got to think about this. Here he was, segregated from his team. He's got this big game tomorrow, and they're counting on him because he was a good player, a really good lineman. He was a blocker and a defensive tackle. And then he was gone from his wife that he was away from for almost a year. She was all of 16 years old at that time. So think of it. He's probably pacing back and forth in this room. His emotions are running high. As best as we can say, he grabbed some hotel stationery and started writing his thoughts on it. He folded it up, put it in his coat pocket, forgot about it. Next day, he has a football game to go to. They had a team meeting Friday night, and he moved on with business. So the Minnesota, like I said, was expecting a really good game. Their line was bigger than Ames. They had a guy who was either an All-American or potentially an All-American running back. Hard-hitting game. It started out, Minnesota went ahead. Minnesota was going to kick a field goal to go further ahead in the era when low scores were the norm. Missed the field goal. Iowa State comes down, scores 7-7 at halftime. It's a hard-hitting game. The coach asks Sam Williman asks Jack, "Are you okay?" Because he noticed Jack was favoring his shoulder. He said, "I'm fine." Second half starts. Hard-hitting game. Really hard. Neither team can do much. Jack is playing a tremendous game on defense. He's getting the guys on his side. When they ran to the other side of the line, he was going over there and making plays. Then there was one play, of course, that changed the history of Iowa State football. There was a running play, and as best as we can tell, some blockers were ahead of Jack Trice, ahead of the ball carrier. Jack Trice, who's known as a very hard-playing football player, kind of threw himself into these blockers in an attempt to make a roll block. Well, roll blocks weren't coached back then. The coaches and players knew they were dangerous. But he did that. He took the blockers out, big pile up. The ball, as best we can tell, the ball carrier went somewhere else. When the play ended, everybody got up and Jack stayed on the floor or on the field. They got him to the sidelines and he said, "I'm okay, let me play." But they knew something was worse. So he was taken to the University of Minnesota hospital. The game went on. Iowa State played hard, but lost 20-17. It was deemed that Jack could make the trip back. He, of course, wanted to go. Who wants to leave their teammates and stay in a hospital out of state? He rides overnight. They come back to Nevada. They come over to the Iowa State College Hospital, which is, at least when I was still on campus, was where the counseling center was. And for years, it's where student health was. And he was admitted to the hospital. They thought maybe he could play by conference, later in the conference season or so. But he took a turn for the worse. Sunday night, which was, they had arrived in Ames Sunday morning on overnight train trip. Sunday night, they bring in a doctor from Des Moines. He says, "I don't think we can do surgery. I think he's strong enough." Next morning, his 16-year-old bride, Cora May, decides to run out for a quick bite to eat around noon. She's summoned back. They said, "Jack's not doing well. You need to get back." She walks into his room looks at Jack. Jack looks at her. She says, "Hello, darling," but Jack never said anything. At 1 o'clock, she heard the bell tower, the campanile, ring once. At 2 o'clock, it rang twice. Then at 3 o'clock, it rang 3 times, and she looked over and realized that Jack was gone. He had died from his internal injuries. So, as people were collecting his belongings, somebody discovered a note in his coat pocket, read it, realized, wow, and got it to President Pearson. And it became part of the ceremony the next day in honor of Jack Trice. You can see the campanile on the right of this photo. In the middle, there's a gray coffin with a cardinal and gold blanket with Jack Trice's coffin. And in this ceremony, with Cora May's permission, President Pearson read this letter, and it was from Jack Trice, written at the Curtis Hotel, October 5th. To whom it may concern, my thoughts just before the first real game of my life. The honor of my race, family, and self are at stake. Everyone is expecting me to do big things. I will. Well, and it goes on with coach speak and other things that he's planning to do. So Jack Trice's family is coming by train, missed this celebration of life ceremony, collected his coffin, and with a couple people from Ames went back to Ohio. He was buried. The rest of the season, Iowa State played pretty well. Not super, but played well without Jack. Couple more years, the team was doing okay, but nothing great. Sam Williman went back to Ohio. By this time, people had forgotten about Jack Trice. Williman was an Ohio State guy. He went back there. He eventually became the head coach. He was later fired, partly because he couldn't beat Michigan, which shows that some things never change. So the rest of the Jack Trice story, this plaque was put up in State Gym, and it stayed there 20s, 30s, World War II, 1950s, and then Tom Emerson, Ames boy, former head of the ISU journalism department, still living in town, a person I certainly look up to and almost my Jack Trice mentor on everything, wrote an article about this when he was a journalism major. It got little attention, but he did the initial research that led to all of our current knowledge of Jack Trice. Then, in the 70s, somebody else saw this, took it to a friend. It became part of a class. They decided, hey, maybe we should try to get them to build that new stadium that they're building here in Ames for Jack Trice. The rest of the story. It became Cyclone Stadium, Jack Trice Field in 1983 in a compromise. Then in the 1997, GSB moved that. They named the stadium Jack Trice Stadium. They went through the processes on campus. Then in August, late August of that year, game against Oklahoma State, they dedicated the statue at the stadium. We didn't win the game, but they read the letter at the game. Here is Chase Allen. He spoke at the ceremony to relocate the statue back on Central Campus. This was late last fall. So I'm going to get to questions, but I'm going to go ahead and ask and answer the very first one that I often get. But people say, well, what really happened in Minnesota? I mean, how did he die? Well, I say one of three things happened. He was targeted because he was the best Iowa State lineman on the field, and he was tearing up Minnesota. And if you saw the ESPN story on Jack Trice, you'll hear what Gene Smith had to say, and I take that to heart. He thinks that Minnesota targeted Jack Trice, but to knock him out of the game, but not to kill him. Of course, the other thing could have been he was targeted because he was Black, or it was simply a accident. But I'm not naive enough to think it wasn't racially motivated. And then we get to 2020, and as I said, this story resonates more than it ever has. I think Jack Trice is a hero. He dedicated his play for his race, family, and self, and he died in the process. And for that, I put him on a pretty high pedestal. So, can I answer any questions?
Steve, that was awesome. We usually have a pretty vocal group here, lined up usually with a lot of questions. So we'll give it a minute. Feel free to either unmute and ask Steve a question or put it in the chat, and we'll make sure that we filter those over to Steve. You know, one thing, Steve, I heard that I had not heard before that was fascinating in your story was the brief stop, which probably wasn't too brief actually, that Jack made on the way to the train station in Aveda to see Cora one more time. How foreshadowing, you know, that was.
Yes. Now, I don't talk about this much because I don't have the evidence, but I was told by somebody who was back there that there were rumors that Minnesota said, don't bring up a Black player. Minnesota had a Black player on its team a few years earlier. I don't know, but that certainly could have weighed on Jack's mind. It's something for the future Trice scholars to discuss.
Thank you. And then a question from Louis. Do you have any information about Cora May after Jack died? Is there some information there?
Well, I'm not trying to tip my hat, but I think that's next. It's the area where I'm researching now more about Cora May. Cora May died a few years ago, and she had a very interesting story. She remarried a man named Homer Green. They raised 3 children, and all 3 children got college degrees. And a couple of them in fields where they were like the first African-American graduate of the program. Cora May came to Iowa State. She was a student here, but never graduated from college. To my knowledge, never went back to school. But she wanted to make sure her 3 children, 2 daughters and a son, were well educated. And one daughter who I had interviewed extensively, who was said she was the closest of the 3 children to her mother. Of course, maybe all kids say that. She was a librarian, but she's the one who told me about Jack and Cora May and hugging, and how she was just so frightened that something's not right with Jack. The other daughter became a nurse and moved out to California, which is where Cora May spent her last few years. And the son was a physical therapist, and a very good one, according to some family members. He, to Cora May's better wishes, played some football, and I think even at college level. Once he got hurt on the field, and I guess, as you can imagine, Cora May went bonkers, but he was okay. And so I was pursuing this pre-pandemic. I'm going to get back to it because I think Cora May, although she was short in stature, I really think she was a person who probably was quite the support for Jack Trice in a lot of endeavors. That's something I can't prove yet. It's just a feeling I have.
Did another question here. When did ISU have another Black football player? Do you know what followed that up?
Well, I believe it was later in the 20s, a man named Holloway Smith. Now, Tom Crochelle from the athletic department has written about him, and Tom can answer this much better than I can, but I believe Holloway Smith was just the opposite of Jack. very outgoing, very social, was involved with the university, went on to live a long life, the whole bit. Okay, 30s, 40s, sometime in the 50s, the university didn't have any players. And it depends how you want to say. Did they acquiesce to the Southern schools in the conference? Was just the way things went? That's an area I haven't studied, but it was the 50s before we started seeing African American athletes, and not very many back at Iowa State.
Thank you. And Glenn Ripke mentioned that we're coming up on the 100th anniversary of his death. Is there any type of remembrance or celebration, memorial being planned to remember him?
Pre-pandemic, there was a committee formed and was starting initial work. To my knowledge, it's been put on hold for obvious reasons, that sort of thing. And last I had heard, they were exploring all kinds of ways to honor Jack Trice on the centennial of his death. I'm not involved, but I'm sure that will pick up again.
Steve, I'll answer that. I'm on that committee. It is still meeting. It's 2023 is when the centennial will be celebrated. And there's also a new committee that's been formed, and it's called the Jack Trice Centennial Art Committee, that is also working on a new art piece that will be at the stadium location with all the renovations that are happening. When it was voted to move the current statue back to campus because it'd be dwarfed by the new performance center that's being built. So there is work underway. We just this morning met with the artists to start developing some concepts for the art, but there is a committee working on both the centennial and a new art installation.
Excellent. That's excellent. I'm glad they're still meeting and still moving ahead on everything.
And then couple questions. I know George, your publicist, did a great job of highlighting your book coming into this meeting. There he is, got a picture of it. But where can we buy your book is the question.
Well, the Memorial Union Bookstore has had copies. I haven't been in there the last few months. I have a few copies. If somebody wants them, we can get you one. I think you can go to Amazon and order it. The company Perfection Learning Corporation of Des Moines. I mean, we bought some couple 3 months ago. I assume they still have them. I don't know. I think they still print it. It's still selling. That one and the one on the Tuskegee Airmen, which actually has sold more than Jack Trice. I believe, at least up to a little while ago, was still on in their catalog. But you can certainly contact me. We can get you a book.
And then let's see. So Jeff also asked about why does the stadium name not include the word memorial, as he thinks that would add a bit of the mystery of who this person is. Do you have any insight in that?
No, I would say that's something I've never thought of that. I will say, for obvious reasons, I think he's somebody that we can't honor too much for a lot of reasons. So yeah, I don't know. That would be that'd be something somebody better at that than I can answer.
Did ISU provide any compensation to Cora May? Do you know?
I'm not aware of anything now. There was a collection for Jack's widow. I'm sorry, his mother, who was a widow, Anna, supposedly to pay off a loan for his school and her mortgage. She had been a widow for quite a few years. I'm not aware of anything official that way. Cormay went home age 16, and within a few years, remarried and had a full life.
And from what you know, Steve, about Jack Trice, Jeff Isles asks, what do you think Jack would think of all this attention?
That's a good question. I don't, from what I've heard from people, he kind of laid low. I don't think he was, I don't sense he was a person who went after attention. I think he was a person who wanted to be liked. My good friend, and she's a partner in some of my Jack Trice endeavors, Ruth Ann Gaines, former East High teacher, now a state legislator. We were working on a project. She says, well, I think he's trying too hard to get people to like him. And I'd never thought of it that way. So I would say maybe that was more of the case. I never sensed that he was somebody that said, look at me, look at me.
And this is just hot off the press. If you're going to run to the Ames Library and try to check out the book, you got to wait till Jeannie Rogert is done reading it, because she just put it on hold at the Ames Public Library. Just
Well,
saving you all.
Yeah, there used to be 2 copies. Maybe one of them was stolen.
Maybe there's still one there. But yeah, just thank you. A couple comments. Stuart Melvin says just speechless after this presentation. Some of this information he knew, but never the details that you had presented. I would agree with that. Being a lifelong, Cyclone fan and alum myself, you just can't hear enough about this story. It's just moving and amazing. And, we thank you for, doing the work that you did and still do to help. Like you said, you can't create enough, commentary around this. In your opinion, this needs to be talked about even more.
Yeah.
So thank you again on short notice.
No, glad to do it. I'm still working on Jack Trice stuff. Before the pandemic, was working on a organization to further Jack Trice's legacy. And part of nothing was official yet, but part of our mission was 2 words that have taken on quite a stronger meaning now: social justice, and including, we wanted to create the next generation of Trice scholars and students. So thank you. I enjoyed meeting you all.
Thank you very much. And we got one more question here, just sneaking into the buzzer. Mark Edelman, if you want to unmute and ask your question.
It wasn't a question. It was just I stayed in the Curtis Hotel about 35 years ago, and I didn't know the Jack Trice story then, but it's no longer there. But that's interesting. Makes it really interesting.
It was gone when I did the research in the late 90s. Bob Fisher, when the guy who knew him, was a salesman. Traveled, and he stayed there a lot. He said partly because it was a good businessman's hotel, and as that was his word, businessman's hotel, and he liked that they did let Jack Trice in. There is some questions of was the team actually staying at that hotel, or were they somewhere else? That's for future scholars to figure out.
Oh, thank you very much. Amazon does have your book, it looks like, according to Karen, for $21.95. But thanks again, Steve. I appreciate you taking time to share with our group. And thanks for taking care of Dean, living next door to Dean as well. So
okay, will do. All righty.
My thought for the day. Yeah, my thought for the day. Oh, next week, Lauren Jolly is our program, and Lauren is the ISU College of Human Sciences Dean, I believe. So she'll be next week. And then mark your calendars and don't be late for November 9th. We have Paul Alexander, who is one of 2 polio victims in the U.S. that remains on an iron lung, will be presenting to our group from Texas. We are going to allow and invite others to take part in our club meeting that day. But we want to make sure that all of you are aware that, I guess we do have a limit of how many people can be on a Zoom call, and that's 400. So that'd be pretty powerful to get to 400 plus. So make sure you heard it here first, that you are one of the first 400 people, hopefully, to log into Zoom on November 9th. And I think maybe we'll have a platform to maybe email questions to Karen, maybe ahead of that, just because there's going to be some limited time probably to, field questions there. My thought for the day, I used my entire Jack Trice quote a few weeks ago after the ESPN story. So I'm going to just pull out the 2 words I think that are pretty meaningful in that entire quote. My thought for the day is, I will. And I think that's pretty powerful because that's action. That just shares what he was feeling and how he approached that game. And I think probably how he approached life. So thanks again for sharing. Thanks for participating in our group meeting. And if you are interested in showing your smiling face behind a mask next Monday at the Gateway, please email Karen as soon as you can by Wednesday at 3 p.m. And we may be able to run a hybrid meeting. So thanks everyone, and we'll see you next week.
Thanks, Steve.
4-way test.
Oh yeah, thanks. Got all excited there. It's probably, now we got people dropping like flies and they're not even going to stick around. Okay, 4-way test. Of all the things we think, say, or do, is it the truth? Is it fair to all concerned? Will it be beneficial to all concerned? Thank you.
I'm
Close.
October 5th, 1923. To whom it may concern. My thoughts just before the first real college game of my life. The honor of my race, family, and self are at stake. Everyone is expecting me to do big things. I will.
Jack Trice was Iowa State's first African-American player, and his legacy stems from a single game with the Cyclones. Trice was one of only a handful of black players at predominantly white institutions in the 1920s.
He had a lot of things resting on his shoulders. Not being able to ride in the same train car, not being able to be in the same hotel. So you have this young man realizing what he's doing is bigger and more than football.
Trice was not allowed to join his teammates for dinner the night before his first real game. Instead, he remained in his room and wrote himself a letter. Trice vowed that he would give his all.
Body and soul are to be thrown recklessly about on the field tomorrow. Every time the ball is snapped, I'll be trying to do more than my part.
He knew in his heart and soul, probably as a black man, if he failed, there wouldn't be an opportunities for others. And I believe that.
Beware of mass interference. Fight low with your eyes open and toward the play. Roll block the interference.
On October 6, 1923, in a game at the University of Minnesota, Trice, who had broken his collarbone earlier in the game, threw his body at 3 Minnesota linemen who were attempting to run interference. The force of the collision put Trice on his back, where he was subsequently trampled as play continued.
As best as we can tell, a runner was following 2 blockers. Trice jumped in there, did a roll block to take out the blockers so his teammates could make the tackle. It was decided that Jack Trice could ride the train back to Iowa, which would be an overnight trip. He did that and then was immediately entered into what was then the Iowa State College Hospital.
2 days later, with his wife by his side, Trice died as a result of internal bleeding. He was 21. In the aftermath of Trice's death, the white sports media and university officials concluded that it was not racism, but the brutality of football that caused the injuries. Indeed, football was an extraordinarily brutal business. The game claimed 18 lives in 1923. For African Americans, football was an extension of the organized terrorism against blacks. As early as 1892, Michigan's George Jewett heard Purdue fans shout, "Kill the coon."
I can only ascertain based upon everything that I've heard and read that there was intent to harm. I cannot say that it was an intent to kill, but that obviously was the outcome.
No matter what the intent behind it was, you could say it was a legal play.
One of three things happened to Jack Trice in the Minnesota game. One, he was targeted because he was the best Iowa State lineman and he was playing a heck of a game. Or two, he was targeted because he was black and the only African American on the field. Or three, it was simply an accident. But I'm not naive enough not to think it was racially motivated.
Trice's largely forgotten story was resurrected in the 1970s after a school official found a dusty, forgotten plaque in the gym years before and wrote a story about Trice's tragic gridiron death. A year later, the student government recommended that the newly constructed football stadium be named in Trice's honor. The university resisted. Finally, after 24 years of the battle, in 1997, the university relented. Cyclone Stadium became Jack Trice Stadium, the only FBS stadium named after an African-American athlete.
We were not a major push in the name change. We were kind of subtle. The students really drove it.
It was on every single student body president's set of priorities that they were not going to let this die.
The source of his legacy is the dignity with which he endured slights and the selflessness with which he played the game.
Hearing the Jack Trice story instantly made me feel a sense of responsibility to emulate the character that Jack stood for, the courage that Jack had.
Somebody like that cannot be forgotten for the courageous acts that he went through to give people like me the opportunity to play.
It seems that African Americans somehow, when they go through tragedy, and we see this now with Breonna Taylor, we saw this with George Floyd, we saw this with Dr. Martin Luther King. I'm not real sure why in this country blacks reach humanity or some sense of full human capacity until there's a tragedy.
He played for honor and for his own unwavering sense of pride. 97 years after Trice's death, the stadium that bears his name is a reminder of a black life that mattered and an indomitable spirit that lives on.
Be on your toes every minute if you expect to make good. Jack.
William Roden reporting.
Karen, where'd that come from?
That is an ESPN. Hold on. That is an ESPN YouTube video. You can find it
Okay.
on you. There we go. You can find it on YouTube, or just check ESPN, and then let's see here, what's the name of it? It's I can't see. How Jack Trice legacy continues.
Okay, thanks.
So that's the title of the video. If you want, I can send it out. I can send out a link. I can send that out to the club members.
Probably wouldn't be a bad
So
idea.
you can click on the link and take a look. So it was shown at one of the football games not too long ago. So I'll get that out.
Thanks a lot.
All right. All right. Thank you. You guys take care. Have a good week.